Hello, welcome to our Banned Books Week event. My name's Henry. I'm a member of the local Amnesty International Group in Sacramento, California. Banned Books Week is an annual event that celebrates the freedom to write and read. Writers, booksellers, teachers, and librarians have long used this occasion to advocate for the right to read and to fight censorship of reading material for adults and children. As activists with Amnesty International, we're broadening the issue to include authors, poets, journalists, activists from around the world who have promoted human rights and they've been censored, persecuted, or even killed for their activities. We'll be highlighting the cases of 9 writer activists from around the world. We'll give you some background information and read a short selection of the author's own words. Stay tuned for some raffles throughout the event and some suggestions for action that you can take to defend human rights. Thank you to the 9 members of our local Amnesty International group who will be presenting today, and thanks to everyone who is joining us for this webinar. A couple of things I want to mention. If you want to communicate with the host or presenters, please use the Q&A button to type in a question or comment. And let me tell you, what you type in the Q&A is only going to be visible to the event organizers, to the host, and not to others. Chat is disabled during our presentation. So, thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Stephanie, and I am a member of the Amnesty International Sacramento local group. So today I'm going to talk about an individual named Galal el-Bahari. Galal el-Bahari is an Egyptian poet, lyricist, and activist who is known for his collaboration on the popular song Balaha and numerous poetry collections. He was just about to publish his latest book of poetry when he was detained in secret, tortured, and imprisoned for addressing the state of the Egyptian economy and his viewpoints on ongoing corruption in 2018. It was not until a week after his arrest that his family and lawyers learned of his detainment at a high state security prison. His original trial was postponed on multiple occasions to extend his imprisonment. Ultimately, months after his arrest, he was sentenced to 3 years in prison for insulting the military and spreading false news. Galal remains principled in his values and stance, determined to make his voice heard. He undertook a hunger strike in 2019 while in prison to protest the grave injustices still occurring across the country. He has continued to write new letters and works of artistic expression while in prison. His writings have been translated to multiple languages to call attention to his arrest and highlight representative themes of justice and human rights. I will now read a poem that he wrote in May of 2018, and this is translated from Egyptian colloquial Arabic. This is called A Letter from Torah Prison. You, something in the heart, unspoken, something in the throat, the last wish of a man on the gallows. When the hour of hanging comes, the great need for oblivion, you, prison and death, free of charge. You, the truest meaning of man, the word no. I kiss your hand and, preparing for the trial, put on a suit and pray for your Eid to come. I'm the one who escaped from the Mamluks. I'm the child whose father's name is Zahran, and I swim in your name, addiction. I'm the companion of outlawed poets. Oh, my oblivion, I'm the clay that precedes the law of concrete. In the heart of this night, I own nothing but my smile. I take my country in my arms and talk to her about all the prisoners' lives. Out there, beyond the prison's borders, beyond the jailer's grasp, and about man's need for his fellow man, about a dream that was licit, impossible, about a burden that could be borne if everyone took part in it. I laugh at a song they call criminal, which provoked them to erect 100 barricades. On our account, they block out the sun and the thoughts in the head. They want to hide the past behind locks and bolts, preventing him from whispering about how things once were. They want to hide him by appointing guards. weak-minded foreigners estranged from the people. But what wonder is this? His fate is written in all the prison cells. His cell has neither bricks nor steel, and he was not defeated within it. Outside, a squadron of slaves. Inside, a crucified Messiah. The thorns above his brow are witnesses. You betrayed his revolution with your own hands. With shame in your eyes, you are the Judases of the past. Whatever your religion, whatever minuscule vision you have, we've come back and we see you. You who imprison the light, that naked groaning, the light doesn't care how tall the fence is. It's not hemmed in by steel bars or officers' uniforms. It cannot be forgotten. You can take a public square away from us, but there are thousands and thousands of others, and I'll be there waiting for you. Our land will not betray us. With each olive branch, we're weaving your shrouds. And the young man you killed has come back, awake now and angry. He's got a bone to pick with his killer. He's got a bone to pick with the one who betrayed him, the one who, on that night of hope, acquiesced, fell silent, and slept. His wound has healed. He's come back. A night without a bridle. He's setting up the trial, while an imam prays among us and illumines the one who was blind. He's rolling up his sleeves, preparing for a fight. He was killed. Yes, it's true. And yet he has his role in this epic. He stands there now and holds his ground. We've returned to call on God and proclaim it. We've come back hand in hand. Again, we proclaim it. We've come back, and we vow to spread the light, the new dawn, the keen-sighted conscience. We've come back, and we can smell the fear in your veins, and our cheers tonight are the sweetest of all. We are not afraid. We are not afraid.
My name is Clifford Anderson. I'm a member of Amnesty International Sacramento. Mohamedou Ould Slahi was born in Mauritania, a country on the west coast of Africa. Intellectually talented, he was able to attend college in 1988 in Germany on a scholarship and continued to work there as an engineer for about 12 years. In 2001, he then returned home in Mauritania around 2000, continuing to work as an engineer. He then returned to his home in Mauritania around 2000. In 2001, he began to experience some very dramatic changes in his life that he could not at the time understand. Initially, he was detained by police officials of his own government with no explanation given. Shortly thereafter, he was rendered to a brutally run prison in Jordan, yet again without any official explanation. Some months after that, he was flown to an American military prison in Afghanistan, and shortly after that, flown yet again to another military prison, this time the one at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, that had recently been established by the Bush administration. What Mohamedou could not have foreseen at the time is that this would be the beginning of a 14-year-long ordeal of arbitrary and incommunicado detention involving sustained, inhumane, degrading treatment and torture. For much of his stay at Guantanamo, Mohamedou was able to keep a diary, which was eventually published and made available to the public under the title Guantanamo Diary. Not surprisingly, the more gruesome aspects of his torture were redacted by prison officials from the published version. Frankly, I have been unable to ascertain why U.S. officials allowed the diary to be published at all, since it reveals a constant stream of glaring violations of human rights inflicted on the prisoners. Despite all, no criminal charges were filed against Mohamedou over the 14 years of his incarceration, neither by the U.S. nor any other government. He was cleared and released in 2016 and repatriated to his home in Mauritania. Here are some concluding words from the diary he wrote between 2003 and 2005. Quote, "So has the American democracy passed the test it was subjected to with the 2001 terrorist attacks? I leave this judgment to the reader. As I am writing this, though, the United States and its people are still facing the dilemma of the Cuba detainees. In the beginning, the US government was happy with its secret operations, since it thought it had managed to gather all the evils of the world in Gitmo and had circumvented US law and international treaties so that it could perform its revenge. But then it realized, after a lot of painful work, that it had gathered a bunch of non-combatants. Now the US government is stuck with a problem, but it is not willing to be forthcoming and disclose the truth about the whole operation. Everybody makes mistakes. I believe the US government owes it to the American people to tell them the truth about what is happening in Guantanamo. So far, I have personally cost American taxpayers at least $1 million, and the counter is ticking higher every day. Under these circumstances, Americans need and have the right to know what the hell is going on. What do the American people think? I am eager to know. I would like to believe the majority of Americans want to see justice done, and they are not interested in financing the detention of innocent people. I know there is a small extremist minority that believes that everybody in this Cuban prison is evil and that we are treated better than we deserve. But this opinion has no basis in ignorance. I'm amazed that somebody can build such an incriminating opinion about people he or she doesn't even know." Unquote. Here we are in 2020, and Guantanamo is still open. Many of the detainees were non-combatants, never charged, and eventually released to a country willing to accept them. The US government is unable or unwilling to try the Al-Qaeda terrorists involved in planning the 9/11 hijacking because of the extensive use of torture in their interrogation.
You're muted. I'm sorry, I'm going to start over. I'm Diane. I'm a member of Amnesty International Sacramento, and I'm going to introduce you to Ahmet Altan, novelist and journalist from Turkey. Well-known Turkish writer Ahmet Altan, whose novels have been published in 23 countries, has remained behind bars in Silivri prison in Turkey for the past 4 years. Ahmet Altan is a Turkish novelist, journalist, and founder of the now defunct newspaper Taraf. He is the author of the smuggled out of prison memoir, I Will Never See the World Again. As a newspaper journalist, he often published articles critical of the government and the trend towards repression. In court, he was charged with spreading subliminal messages announcing a military coup based on a television appearance. He was also charged with attempting to overthrow constitutional order through his published articles. Turkey currently has more writers and journalists in jail than any other country in the world. Turkey has also been accused of destroying more than 300,000 books. On May 24, 2020, Ahmet Altan's lawyer was able to bring out a statement from him, and I will read some excerpts from his statement for you. These days, being in an actual prison while everyone else is confined inside their homes feels like sitting in a fish tank at the bottom of the ocean. I can see, by reading old newspapers the guards give us and watching some of the channels we're allowed to watch, that you're worried to death. Well, I'm 70 years old and I am in a prison where COVID-19 cases are spreading fast. We're witnessing the world break along a gigantic fault line that is making life itself tremble. This rupture promises us a hopeful future. In a few months, this disaster will be over and humankind will arrive at a new era. This disaster has shown us many truths we've long ignored. It has also given us directions to our destination. I think the 21st century will begin once this pandemic is over. The pandemic got out of control because of the blunders states and their administrators made out of greed for power. If China had not lied in the first place, and if the leaders of other countries had not remained unconcerned, the affliction would not have achieved such enormity. We saw yet another truth. The ability to win elections and the ability to lead a society are entirely different skills. Elections are often won by those who lie the most, those who play the epic soundtrack louder than others. But those same people cannot lead with wisdom. We have seen many examples of this phenomenon during the pandemic. We are learning that some people having more money than they can spend, while others remain penniless and without shelter, can create a common disaster. If you can't save a market worker in China, you can't save the Prime Minister in Britain. This could lead to a major mutation. If you want to protect yourself, you have to protect others. Selfish acts will kill you. People have realized, perhaps for the first time, and in such clear consciousness, that they are part of a great flow called humanity. This virus not only knocks down old men like myself, but also all kinds of aged concepts, beliefs, and ideas. We are painfully crossing the threshold of a new world, and even more important, a new kind of human being. In the midst of this great trauma, I am optimistic about the future. I believe what I'm saying will happen, and I know I won't be around to see it happen. I'm writing this as I await in a prison cell the fierce attack of a virus that kills people my age. I am not optimistic for myself, but for the humanity of which I am a part. In November, we were given a radish along with our meals at lunchtime. My cellmate put that radish in a paper cup and left it beside the iron bars at the window. The radish began to rot. Recently, a green sprout emerged from it. It grew and grew. Little white flowers blossomed at the end of the sprout. Each morning,
Each morning, I get up and look at those flowers. I witness the great cliche.
the radish is dying and becoming alive at the same time. A miserable radish creates flowers out of its own decay. Without giving up its optimism, it reaches out to the future as it dies. Perhaps I will have fallen sick by the time you read this, but what difference does it make? If a radish dying in a paper cup can blossom, an old man in prison can be optimistic. We aren't going to be more despairing than a radish now, are we? We invite you to write to the Minister of Justice or the Ambassador from Turkey, urging that Ahmed Altan be released from prison. A sample letter is waiting for you to use, along with mail and email addresses. Please look for this link at the end of the presentations or find it on our webpage at amnestysacramento.org. And we just found out that we can also send Ahmed a message of support. His lawyer will deliver it, and that will also be at the website, www.amnestysacramento.org. These are the books that we're offering for our book raffle. The Ruth Bader Ginsburg's books are meant for elementary, middle school, or high school students. And so you can either keep them for yourself, give them to a family member, give them to a school or a library. Stamped is the remix of Stamped from the Beginning, written by Ibram Kendi. Jason Reynolds, a young adult novelist, remixed it and made it simpler and more hip for the young adult crowd, but adults love that book too. And then last of all is Just Mercy, Brian Stevenson, which will actually be the first book that we're going to be reading at a Human Rights Book Club that we're starting November 19th. You can register at tinyurl.com/Human Rights Book Club or go to our website and there's a link there also. The website is amnestysacramento.org. So now we're going to pull names for the raffle.
Okay, Henry back again, and I'm here with my hat that has the names of our participants today, and I'm going to draw two names. If your name is drawn, please put your name and address in the Q&A. Then we'll know, and the book that you're choosing. That way we'll know where to send your book. And if you have any questions or problems doing it that way, you can always send us an email and we'll use that information to get the book to you. So drawing the first name here. And the first name drawn, I don't see that name up there. Let's see. Sandra Clark. Sandra Clark gets a choice of books and she can put her information in the Q&A. And I'm drawing another name here. I don't see that name up there. The second book goes to Ellen Nathan. It's here. Ellen, you can put your contact information and your choice of books in the Q&A. Everybody stay tuned. There will be a second raffle later in the hour.
And just remember that only the host can see what you're typing into the Q&A, so the whole group won't see it.
You're muted. I'm sorry, I just realized I didn't unmute. Hi, my name is Shreya, and I'll be talking about novelist Tsitsi Dangarembga. The Booker Prize is the most coveted award in the English language literature. Tsitsi Dangarembga is the novelist from Zimbabwe who was just nominated for the Booker Prize shortlist for her book, This Mournable Body. She was arrested this summer in a sweeping crackdown by security agencies ahead of planned anti-corruption demonstrations. Tensions have risen in the poor South African country recently, as security agencies have sought to stifle widespread anger at soaring prices, inadequate public services, and allegations of corruptions at the highest levels of President Emmerson Mnangagwa's government. Tsitsi protested in the streets, carrying signs calling for reforms in government and for the release of Hopo Chinono, a recently arrested journalist. After protesting on social media about the arrest, she tweeted, Friends, here is a principle. If you want your suffering to end, you have to act. Action comes from hope. This is the principle of faith and action. The next day, she was arrested and charged with incitement to commit violence and breaching anti-coronavirus health regulations. Her critically acclaimed first novel, Nervous Conditions, includes a preface with an interview of the author. Here are Titsy's words from that interview. I find it difficult to write about race, perhaps because I feel so strongly about it having gone through so much as a result of it. I use the past tense, but racist supremacist practices still abound in Zimbabwe and are perpetrated not only by white people. Everything I have tried to write about so far has sounded fantastic, absurd, and unreal. I think this is the catch with racism, looked at objectively. Looked at objectively, it sounds too absurd to be true. In addition, Zimbabwean society is not as open as American society. We do not debate race here at any meaningful level, but use it to settle old scores and maintain the status quo in often violent, usually vitriolic ways. So anything that is even mildly critical of the white society in Zimbabwe today is seen as anti-democratic, prejudiced, and radical. It thus does not serve to unify the nation in any way, but to polarize a dangerously polarized country even further. White society in my part of the world has very cleverly made itself the victim, and has done this with the full backing of the international establishment. Having said that, the prose I am working on now does take that particular issue on, and I am finding it difficult to solve the problems I have mentioned lucidly, yet with both passion and compassion. Titsy is now out on bail. In a statement that followed the protest and arrests, Amnesty International said, "The brutal assault on political activists and human rights defenders who have the courage to call out alleged corruption and demand accountability from the government is intensifying. The persecution of these activists is a blatant abuse of the criminal justice system and a mockery of justice."
Hi, my name is Louise. I'm a longtime member of Amnesty International and a participant in Sacramento Local Group 283. And Jamal Khashoggi was a Saudi Arabian journalist. For decades, he was close to the Saudi royal family. He worked for Prince Turki Al Faisal, both in London and when the prince became Saudi Arabia's ambassador to the United States. He held several media positions, but was dismissed from each following government pressure. Ultimately, he was entirely prevented from publishing in Saudi Arabia, even on Twitter. In 2017, he went into self-imposed exile in the United States, where he wrote for the Washington Post. On October 2nd, 2018, Jamal Khashoggi visited the Saudi consulate in Turkey, expecting to pick up documents needed for his marriage. He was killed and dismembered by a hit team flown in for the purpose. Here are some excerpts from his Washington Post column. Mohammed bin Salman is acting like Putin. He is imposing very selective justice. The crackdown on even the most constructive criticism, the demand for complete loyalty with significant or else, remains a serious challenge to the Crown Prince's desire to be seen as a modern, enlightened leader. We are being asked to abandon any hope of political freedom and to keep quiet about arrests and travel bans that impact not only the critics, but also their families. We are expected to vigorously applaud social reforms and heap praise on the Crown Prince while avoiding any reference to the pioneering Saudis who dared to address these issues decades ago. Is there no other way for us? Must we choose between movie theaters and our rights as citizens to speak out, whether in support of or critical of our government's actions? Do we only voice glowing references to our leader's decisions, his vision of our future, in exchange for the right to live and travel freely for ourselves and our wives, husbands, and children too? He wrote that Saudi Arabia should return to its pre-1979 climate. Women today should have the same rights as men, and all citizens should have the right to speak their minds without fear of imprisonment. He also said that Saudis must find a way where we can accommodate secularism and Islam, something like what they have in Turkey. His final Washington Post article addressed the pressing need for free expression in the Arab world. After Jamal Khashoggi's killing, a United Nations representative traveled to Turkey to review evidence and concluded that the killing represents no less than 6 violations, making it an international crime. The European Union Parliament called on its member states to impose an arms embargo against Saudi Arabia. The United States Senate passed a resolution condemning Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman for Khashoggi's murder. The United States did not investigate further, as President Trump protected Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman from congressional scrutiny.
Hi, my name is Missy, and I'm a member of the local Amnesty International Sacramento group, and I will be introducing Andrea May Sahuri to you today. Andrea May Sahuri is a young reporter on the breaking news team at the Des Moines Register covering police, crime, and justice. Andrea was recently arrested and pepper sprayed in Des Moines, Iowa, while covering the protests that followed George Floyd's death. Andrea is a Palestinian American born in Flint, Michigan. She recently graduated from Columbia University's Graduate School of Journalism in 2019, where she discovered her love and talent for storytelling. On the evening of May 31st, 2020, police pepper sprayed, arrested, and detained Andrea Sahuri while she was reporting on a protest. Even as she kept yelling, "I'm press, I'm press, I'm press," she was pepper sprayed on her arms and face twice at close range. She said, "We dispersed and they charged at us." The police arrested Sahuri, cuffed her in zip ties behind her back, and placed her in a van. She was charged with failure to disperse and interference with local acts. Here's an example of the kind of reporting that Andrea Sahuri was doing as a newspaper writer, where she covered a Des Moines vigil in recognition of Black youth. Des Moines' Black Liberation Movement held a march and vigil on the city's north side Thursday night dedicated to Black children, highlighting the cases of missing Davenport girl Breja Terrell and the death of Des Moines teen Abdullahi Abdi Sharif. Breja, 10, has been missing for more than a month after an overnight stay with her half-brother's father, Henry Dinkins, in Davenport. Police arrested Dinkins, 47, for violating sex offender registry requirements and a probation violation. Authorities identified him as a person of interest in the girl's disappearance, but he has not been charged in the case. Activists criticized authorities for failing to issue an Amber Alert for nearly a week in Breja's case. Sharif, 18, went missing in January. His body was found in the Des Moines River in May. Police closed Sharif's case earlier this month, concluding his manner of death to be either suicide or an accident. Sharif's family believes more could have been done by the Des Moines Police Department and the state of Iowa to find him sooner. Say her name, Bresia Terrell. Say his name, Abdi Sharif. The crowd of about 100 repeated as Courtney Caldwell of the Black Liberation Movement, formerly known locally as Black Lives Matter, led a march from Edna Griffin Park to the Old North Des Moines City Hall building on 6th Avenue, where the vigil was held for Terrell, Sharif, and all Black children. We feel like Black youth voices need to be amplified. They aren't heard enough. They aren't seen enough. Caldwell, 22, told the Register. Black youth should not be forgotten. Activists chose the former North Des Moines City Hall building to make a statement about the many Black children who live in poverty, saying plans to redevelop the building will further gentrify the North Side. A 2017 One Economy report on the state of Black Iowans showed 36% of Black households with children in Polk County live at or below the federal poverty line, compared to 13.5% of people overall in the county. That ain't right, Caldwell said to the crowd. Vigil attendees laid flowers and candles on a makeshift memorial they dedicated to Black children in front of the former City Hall building. It breaks my heart that people will give up on Black youth. We see that in schools too, said Harley Boldridge, 24, who was at the vigil. Someone has to care about these kids. It doesn't make sense not to be here. If you can't show up for a missing child, what will you show up for? Boldridge said. Andrea's case is one of many documented in the recent Amnesty International report, The World is Watching. The report calls attention to the mistreatment of journalists, peaceful demonstrators, and bystanders during recent protests for racial justice. We invite you to write to the county attorney in Iowa urging that all charges and prosecution against journalist Andrea May Sahori be dropped. A sample letter is waiting for you to use, along with mail and email addresses. Please look for this link at the end of the presentations or find it on our webpage at amnestysacramento.org.
Hi, my name is Tanya, and today I'll be reading a book called This Day in June by Gail Pittman. Gail Pittman is a local author, and she is currently the professor of psychology at the Sacramento City College. She is the author of a prize-winning picture book for children titled This Day in June. The book tells the story of a gay pride parade. Since its publication in 2015, it has been challenged and or censored a number of times in libraries in Texas, Illinois, and Iowa. This Day in This Day in Gail Pittman has seen firsthand how far censors will go to have their book pulled from their community. Paul Dorr, the director of a religious group, Rescue the Perishing, released a nearly 30-minute video on Facebook Live in which he denounced the library for having the LGBTQ book and threw them in the burning barrel. The book was made on October 19th, the first day of the city's Gay Pride Festival. Now I'm going to read you the book that was burned. This Day in June by Gail Pittman. This day in June, parade starts soon. Rainbow arches, joyful marches. Motors roaring, spirits soaring. Voices chanting, doggies panting. Clad in leather, perfect weather. Artists painting, sisters fainting. Banners swaying, children playing. Dancers jumping, music pumping. Sidewalk shaking, tummy is aching. Painted ladies, crying babies. Fancy dresses, flowing tresses. Loving kisses, so delicious. All invited, all excited. This day in June, we're all united. Now I will explain one quote in the book, and this is the very first quote, which was, "This day in June, parade starts soon." Although Pride celebrations can be held any time during the year, they are traditionally held in June to commemorate the Stonewall riots. On the morning of June 28, 1969, police conducted a routine raid at the Stonewall Inn, which was a gay bar in Greenwich Village, New York. It was common during that time period for gay bars to be raided by the police. That night in June was different, however. Patrons of the bar fought back against the police and resisted arrest, which led to a 3-day protest, which is now known as the Stonewall Riots. The Stonewall Riots are considered to mark the beginning of the gay liberation movement. People have stood up to the censors, and this book can be found in schools and libraries throughout the United States. Still, we must continue to be vigilant in defending the right to read. In the words of author Gail Pittman, "Unfortunately, the fight isn't over. Books about LGBTQ people continue to be challenged throughout the United States. Why? Because the most powerful way you can marginalize and disempower a group is to erase them, literally or metaphorically, from existence. That's what book banning and censorship in general is all about." Thank you for listening to our presentation.
So now it's time for our second raffle. We have the same books available, but if you would like, we are throwing in This Day in June. A copy of that if you'd like to get that for someone else or yourself. Henry, would you like to pick some names?
Yes, Henry back again with Henry's hat, and I'm going to pull a couple of, we're going to go with 3 names this time. We've got books for more people. First name drawn is Ellen Brahms. Congratulations, Ellen. And next, Jessica Rothery. Congratulations, Jessica. And one more. And the third book goes to Kaylin Topper. So if Kaylin and Jessica and Ellen Brahms all can put contact information in the Q&A. Again, that's only visible to us for us hosts, and we will make sure that you get your choice of book mailed to you.
Hello, my name is Amaris, and I am an Amnesty International Sacramento group member. I will be introducing you to Ken Saro-Wiwa. He is a Nigerian author and activist, and I'll be reading some excerpts from his book, Silence Would Be Treason. Ken Saro-Wiwa is a Nigerian author and president of the Movement for Survival of Ogoni People, an organization set up to defend the environmental and human rights of the Ogoni people of the Niger Delta. Royal Dutch Shell struck oil on Ogoni lands in 1958. An estimated of $30 billion worth of oil has been extracted. In return, the Ogoni people were left with contaminated fields from oil spills, leaving virtually all fish and wildlife to vanish. In January of 1993, Ken Saro-Wiwa gathered 300,000 Ogoni people to march peacefully to demand a share in oil revenues and some form of political autonomy. The Movement for the Survival of Ogoni People also asked for the oil companies to begin environmental remediation and pay compensation for the past damages. Amnesty International adopted Ken Saro-Wiwa after multiple imprisonments and a fake accusation of murdering Ogoni people. After several peaceful demonstrations, the Nigerian military took control of Ogoni land, subjecting the people to mass rape, arrest, execution, and the burning and looting of their villages. The Nigerian government executed Ken Saro-Wiwa in 1995 after a fraudulent trial and conviction of murder. The only crime he committed was to demand sound environmental practices and to ask for compensation for the devastation of Ogoni territories. I will now be reading an excerpt from his trial speech. We all stand here before history. I am a man of peace, of ideas, appalled by the degenerating poverty of my people who live on richly endowed land, distressed by their political marginalization and economic strangulation, angered by the devastation of their land, their ultimate heritage, anxious to preserve their right to life and to a decent living, and determined to usher this country as a whole, a fair, a just, democratic system which protects everyone and every ethnic group. I have devoted my intellectual and material resources, my very own life, to a cause in which I have total belief and from which I cannot be blackmailed or intimidated. I have no doubt about the ultimate success of my cause, no matter the trials and tribulations which I and those who believe with me may encounter on our journey. Nor imprisonment nor death can stop our ultimate victory. I will be reading the final words of Ken Saro-Wiwa before he was executed. In my innocence of the false charges I face here, in my utter conviction, I call upon the Ogoni people, the people of the Niger Delta, and the oppressed ethnic minorities of Nigeria to stand up now and fight fearlessly and peacefully for their rights. History is on our side. God is on our side. For the Holy Quran says, all those that fight when oppressed incur no guilt, but Allah shall punish the oppressor. The work of Ken Saro-Wiwa and his comrades have inspired activists and the disenfranchised across the world by demonstrating that it is possible to stand up to overwhelming power. Due to the international attention Ken Saro-Wiwa received, Many communities identified with his work as they themselves have experienced such injustices. This has led to multiple mass movements for human rights and environmental rights across the globe that hold corporations accountable as well as their governments.
Hi, this is Henry back again, and I'm here to tell you about Maria Angelita Reza. She's a Filipino-American journalist and author, best known for co-founding the online publication called Rappler. Before that, she spent nearly 2 decades working in Southeast Asia for CNN as a journalist. She is an outspoken critic of Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte, and her numerous arrests are seen by many in the international media and her opposition Liberal Party as being politically motivated. Maria Reza has become quite an attack on one is an attack on all. This is an existential moment in time where if we don't take the right steps forward, democracy as we know it is dead. When journalists are under attack, democracy is under attack. Social media platforms are now the world's largest distributor of news. But while they've taken the revenues, they've ignored the gatekeeping power news groups have traditionally had. It takes courage to fight back against the insidious manipulation these platforms have enabled. They're now used as a weapon against journalists, where lies laced with anger and hate spread faster than facts. The battle for truth is the battle of our generation. With technology as the accelerant, a lie told 1,000,000 times becomes a fact. Without facts, we don't have truth. Without truth, there is no trust. Without all three, you can't have democracy. And that is why democracy is broken around the world. I know this firsthand. In 14 months, the Philippine government filed at least 11 cases and investigations against me and Rappler. I was arrested twice in a 5-week period, and I've posted bail 8 times in about 3 months. I've committed no crime except to be a journalist and to hold power to account. I've seen social media and our legal system weaponized against those who ask questions, who stand up for values, who demand the rights guaranteed under our Constitution, which is patterned after the US Constitution. When I was first arrested early this year, the officer said, "Ma'am, I'm only doing my job." And then he lowered his voice to almost a whisper as he read me my rights. He was clearly uncomfortable, and I almost felt sorry for him, except he was arresting me, the last act in a chain of events meant to intimidate and harass me because I'm a journalist. This officer was a tool of power and an example of how a good man can turn evil and how great atrocities can happen. Hannah Arendt wrote about the banality of evil when describing men who carried out the orders of Hitler in Nazi Germany, how career-oriented bureaucrats can act without conscience because they justified that they're only following orders. This is how a nation loses its soul. So you have to know what values you're fighting for, and you have to draw lines now, where this side you're good and this side you're evil. Help us hold that line. We are canaries in the coal mine because globally, Filipinos spend the most time online, more than 10 hours a day, and on social media. But we're also democracy's dystopian future. If nothing changes, what's happened to us is going to happen to you. It's already happening now. Underlying it all is greed and fear. In our case, the violence, a brutal drug war that the UN says has killed at least 27,000 people, far more than the official number of 5,500. We have to stop taking the bait of emotion, seek what we have in common over what drives us apart, because that's the way the bad guys are working. They take a fracture line in our societies and pound it open to separate us into them versus them. And it's not just the journalists. Let's bring in academia, tech, civil society, the truth tellers. We have to join forces to protect the facts. We have to fight now while we're strong, because as we've learned, you only get weaker over time, because this virus of lies saps civic engagement. If you have no facts, civil society becomes apathetic, and the voice with the loudest megaphone wins. Power and bullies will never stop if you give in to them. We live this every day. Political bullies who threaten and abuse journalists are never happy until they get complete capitulation. Protect the rights guaranteed by our democracies, or watch them slowly erode in plain sight. This is the challenge for all of us today. Maria Ressa now faces 8 court cases, while the directors and staff of Rappler, the online news agency she leads, face 11 more charges. These prosecutions are part of a campaign to silence critics of the government. Since President Duterte was elected, media outlet Rappler has consistently drawn attention to the deadly reality of the war on drugs and the thousands of unlawful killings of poor and marginalized people perpetrated in its name. Its persistence in documenting these abuses has attracted the wrath of the Philippine authorities against Rappler.
We didn't yet get all the addresses for people who won books. If you want a book and you don't wish to have it, please let us know and we'll go on and give it to someone else. Thank you.
So we are coming to the conclusion of our event. Thank you for joining us this afternoon or evening, if it's evening where you are. Please be sure to visit our webpage at amnestysacramento.org. And if you don't remember that web address, you can just Google Amnesty Sacramento and you'll find us. You'll find the names there of all the people that we featured today in case you want to learn more. You'll also find links to easy and quick actions you can take to support Ahmet Altan of Turkey and Andrea May Sahuri of the US. If you want to book in the raffle, make sure we have your address, or you could send us your address later by email. We also encourage others who are attending today to put your mailing address in the Q&A or send it to our group email address, because we have packets of really cool stickers, and we'd like you to send you a collection of human rights stickers if you give that are free to our supporters. Also, if you're interested in our monthly human rights book club that we're just starting, you can sign up information on the website. And to conclude, I'd like to ask you, defend human rights, make sure you vote in the upcoming elections. Stay safe and healthy.